What if I told you that death isn't the end you've been taught to believe, but a doorway, one that opens quietly, and almost no one notices when it does? You've likely asked yourself this question at some point, maybe after losing someone you loved, or after waking from a dream that felt more like a memory than fiction. What really happens after the last breath is taken? Where does the soul go? And more mysteriously, how long does it wait before it returns? You've heard of reincarnation, perhaps even believe in it, maybe not as a doctrine, but as a quiet truth that lives inside your bones. It's not something you were taught in school. It wasn't printed in your biology textbook or mentioned in polite conversations at dinner, but it's always been there, hasn't it? Lingering, whispering. That deep, indescribable sense that this life, this name, this face, this timeline, is not the only one you've lived. Reincarnation is one of humanity's oldest spiritual beliefs. It's survived the rise and fall of civilizations, been preserved in the secret writings of sages, and carried in the chants of monks who never needed science to confirm what their soul already knew. That life doesn't just end, it moves, it shifts, it returns. But here lies the deeper question, one that rarely gets asked out loud. Not just do we come back, but when? How long does a soul wander between lifetimes? Is the return immediate, like stepping through a revolving door from one body to the next? Or is it slow and vast, like drifting through centuries of silence before reawakening to a new identity? You might think about your grandparents and wonder, have they already returned? Could they be a child you've passed on the street, smiling with eyes that seem oddly familiar? Or have they not yet chosen, or been allowed, to come back? And if you've ever held a newborn and felt an overwhelming sense of recognition, you've probably asked yourself if that soul has been with you before. In another form, another body, another time. Maybe you've felt it in yourself, those strange flashes of memory that don't belong to this life. A place you've never visited that feels like home. A fear that's rooted in no experience you can explain. Or a skill that seems to come naturally, as if remembered rather than learned. You might have brushed it off as coincidence, but deep down, you knew better. You knew that something timeless was waking up in you. And that's the paradox. We live in a world obsessed with beginnings and endings, with birth certificates and death records, but the soul does not follow those lines. It doesn't care for calendars. It doesn't measure time the way we do. For the soul, time is fluid. A thread pulled through countless lifetimes, each one stitched into the fabric of eternity. The truth is, we don't really know how long it takes for a soul to reincarnate, but that's only because we've forgotten how to listen. There are signs all around us, stories passed down through generations, sacred texts that speak of the in-between, and experiences that challenge everything we think we know. But society has trained you to ignore them, to see death as a final chapter, and the afterlife as a destination instead of a bridge. Yet even as you read this now, something in you remembers. You're not just curious, you're remembering. This isn't new information. It's ancient truth returning to the surface of your awareness. You wouldn't be here asking these questions if your soul hadn't already lived through this mystery before. So now the question unfolds. What determines the timing? Why do some souls seem to come back within years, while others wait centuries? Is it based on karma, on spiritual evolution, on unfinished business with those still alive? Or is there a deeper pattern, something orchestrated from a higher realm we can't yet see? When you think of someone who's passed on, you might wonder if they've already come back, perhaps even into your own family line. There are stories, countless stories, of children born shortly after a relative's death who seem to carry uncanny similarities, the same mannerisms, same fears, same look in their eyes. Could it be that souls return not only to the earth, but to us? And if so, why do some souls wait? What keeps them lingering in the in-between? Is it choice? Or is it a matter of readiness, conditions that must be met before the soul can return to the physical plane again? There are no simple answers, because this question is far from simple. It's entangled with purpose, with destiny, with healing, and timing we may never fully comprehend with the human mind. But here's what you can feel, if you let yourself feel it. Death is not the end. it's a pause, a transition, and what happens after it is not random. The return of the soul, whether swift or slow, is part of a larger rhythm, one that plays out across lifetimes and dimensions, far beyond the reach of clocks and calendars. This mystery, this great unspoken question, has haunted humanity for millennia, but perhaps it was never meant to be answered with certainty. Perhaps it was meant to draw you inward, to wake you up to the bigger truth, that you are not a body with a soul. You are a soul having a series of beautiful, temporary human experiences. And just as you once came into this life through a veil of forgetfulness, so too will you leave it and return again. When? Only your soul truly knows. But the moment will come, not too soon, not too late, only when everything is ready, and when your return serves the unfolding of something greater. Because the truth is, you are part of a cosmic dance, and even death can't stop the rhythm. What if I told you that the question you've quietly carried in your heart, what really happens between death and rebirth, has been answered for thousands of years, hidden in the folds of ancient scrolls and whispered in temples high in the Himalayas? That the mystery of how long it takes for a soul to reincarnate isn't just spiritual speculation, it's a truth encoded in sacred wisdom that's been patiently waiting for you to remember it. You weren't meant to live in the dark. You were meant to know, to remember, to return to this truth. Across continents and cultures, the story of the soul has been told not in years or hours, but in cycles, in energy, in vibration. The soul's journey isn't measured in the linear time your clocks count, it's measured by your growth, your readiness, your release. Ancient texts, from the Upanishads in India to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, offer maps not of the physical world, but of the soul's long return through the realms of consciousness. And each of those maps says the same thing: your soul doesn't die, it transitions, it travels, and it chooses when to come back. The Upanishads, some of the oldest spiritual texts in human history, speak of the Atman, the eternal soul, as something that rides the river of lives. Not randomly, not passively, but with deep intention. They teach that your actions, your awareness, and your attachments shape what comes next. And so, the time between lives isn't a fixed number, it's a reflection, a mirror of where you are in your evolution. Then there's the Tibetan Book of the Dead, a text so powerful that many traditions feared it would disrupt the illusion of finality. It doesn't just tell you what happens after death, it guides you through it. According to these teachings, the moment of death opens a portal, a state called the bardo. And in the bardo, the soul is confronted not by punishment or paradise, but by itself. You are shown what you've clung to, what you've run from, and what you've forgotten. Your fears take form, your desires speak, your higher self waits in the silence. Some souls stay in this state for what feels like moments, others linger for what could seem like centuries. But remember, this isn't human time, it's soul time. And in soul time, a second can feel like 1,000 years, or 1,000 years can pass like the blink of an eye. Why the difference? Because the soul only reincarnates when it's ready, not when it's convenient, not when the world says it's time, but when the soul has learned, when it has processed, when it has aligned itself with the next necessary experience. That's why two people can die on the same day, but one soul may return within months, perhaps as a child born into the same family, while another waits generations, biding its time until the conditions are perfect for what it came here to evolve through. Spiritual masters across traditions understood this intimately. In ancient Egypt, the Book of Coming Forth by Day, what the modern world calls the Egyptian Book of the Dead, reveals a soul's navigation through 42 judges and symbolic gates, each reflecting the soul's past deeds and consciousness. They believed the soul's journey after death was not one of judgment in the way we think of it, but of weighing. The famous scale that balanced the heart against a feather didn't ask, "Were you good or bad?" It asked, "Were you light? Had you shed your attachments, your anger, your regrets, or would you carry them forward into another life?" And in Buddhism, the teachings of the Wheel of Samsara describe 6 realms of rebirth. A soul could return as a human, yes, but also as a god, a hungry ghost, or even as an animal. Each outcome not a reward or punishment, but a reflection of where the soul's energy vibrates. If you died with anger burning in your chest, fear still in your breath, or deep attachments to the material, your soul might not be ready to ascend into a new human form right away. You might need to cycle through lower realms, not as punishment, but as purification, as remembrance. The truth is, every soul writes its own rhythm. No two are alike. Some have incarnated hundreds of times and move between lives like breath. Others are new to this earthly dimension and need longer periods of reflection in the in-between. And some choose not to come back at all. For this cycle, they stay in higher dimensions to guide, to learn, or to serve as soul guardians for those still walking the earth. But here's something you may not have heard. The moment you truly remember this, everything changes. You start to realize that the soul's journey is not just about past lives or future rebirths. It's about this moment, right now, because how you live, how you breathe, forgive, grow, release, shapes what comes next. If your life feels heavy, stuck, or chaotic, it might not just be this life. You may be carrying echoes of unfinished stories, soul contracts not yet completed, lessons whispered across lifetimes, and when you start to explore this, truly explore it, you may find strange synchronicities unfold. Déjà vu that hits too hard, dreams that feel like memories, people you meet and instantly recognize, as if you've loved them for lifetimes. That's not fantasy, that's resonance, your soul remembering another chapter. So ask yourself, what are you carrying from before? What are you here to resolve? And what would it look like to live today in a way that prepares your soul for the next step, the next body, the next lesson? Because the soul doesn't waste time, it transforms it. And the in-between isn't waiting, it's working on you. Some say the soul reincarnates every 40 to 400 years. Others say it can happen within days. But the real answer isn't a number, it's a frequency. When the soul is vibrating at the next level of its evolution, when the lessons of one life have been digested and the desire for experience arises again, it returns. Not a moment sooner, not a breath too late, and when it does, it carries with it all that came before, not in conscious memory, but in energy, in instinct, in intuition. In the way a child may cry at music from a faraway land they've never visited, or the way you might fear water with no known reason, it's all stored, nothing is lost. Everything is preparation. So, the question isn't just how long it takes to reincarnate. The question is, what will your soul be when it returns? Will it come back clearer, lighter, more aligned with its true essence? Or will it loop back into another round of the same pain, the same confusion, the same forgetting? You get to decide. Right now, in this life. Because the soul is not on a timer, it's on a journey, and it's always heading home. What if I told you that someone once fell asleep, and in that deep, trance-like state, began to speak truths that science still cannot explain, truths about your soul, about the worlds between worlds, about what really happens after death, and how soon, or how slowly, your soul might return? They called him the sleeping prophet, not because he dreamed, but because when he closed his eyes, another kind of vision opened. A vision not bound by the limits of time or the logic of this world. And what he revealed has the power to shake the foundations of everything you've ever believed about life after death. Imagine someone lying peacefully in a sleep-like state, and then beginning to speak, clearly, deliberately, without hesitation, about someone else's past lives. Not from books, not from stories, but from a place beyond, a place your conscious mind cannot reach. He spoke of people he had never met, describing their previous incarnations, where they had lived, what they had suffered, and why they had returned. Sometimes he described a soul who had been reborn just a few short months after death. Other times, he revealed that the soul had waited centuries, lifetimes longer than anyone would expect. These revelations weren't vague or metaphorical, they were precise, detailed. He would speak of a woman who had passed away in the 80s, and then describe her current life, as a child living in another part of the country. He would speak of a soldier who had died in war and returned 2 generations later into his own bloodline, carrying emotional patterns that echoed through time. And what determined the timing of return? Why some souls came back quickly while others lingered in realms unseen. It had nothing to do with clocks or calendars. It had everything to do with readiness. He spoke often of this spiritual readiness, that the soul, after death, enters a place of reflection, a realm where the lifetime just lived is reviewed, not judged, but understood. The lessons, the choices, the unresolved emotions, they all become part of a larger mosaic, and from that place, the soul is guided, gently, wisely, toward its next step. But that step isn't always immediate. Sometimes, the soul isn't ready. Sometimes, the environment it needs hasn't yet formed. Sometimes, the karmic threads must align just so. In those cases, the soul waits, and when it does, time behaves differently. 100 years in the material world may feel like an instant on the spiritual plane, or the opposite. A few short years in human terms may feel like a vast, reflective pause for the soul. You can't measure it the same way you measure human life. The soul doesn't wear a watch. It waits until it's ready, until its next incarnation serves its evolution. And sometimes, that moment comes quickly, especially if the previous life ended suddenly, or if a bond with someone still living is too strong to leave unresolved. Many souls, he revealed, return to the same family. A father who passed young might return as his daughter's son. A sister who died in infancy might return as the cousin who arrives years later, carrying the same eyes, the same laughter, and a strange affinity for things she should not know. These returns are not accidental. They are orchestrated with care, guided by unseen hands that ensure every return is purposeful. But readiness isn't only about timing. It's about healing. A soul, burdened by trauma, regret, or confusion, may need to spend what feels like ages in the spiritual realm, surrounded by mentors, bathed in light, undergoing what he called vibrational restoration. These aren't punishments, they're acts of love. The soul is never thrown back into the world unprepared. It is nurtured, taught, restored, and only then does it return, when the vibration of its next life matches the healing it has received. There were cases that stunned even those who believed in the mystical. One reading told of a soul who had not incarnated for nearly 1,000 years. In that time, it had served in realms beyond ours, working not only on itself, but assisting other souls in transition. Its return was not random. It came at a moment in history when its gifts were needed most. Another soul returned mere weeks after passing, called back by a desperate promise made at the time of death, a promise that bound it to a loved one still alive, still grieving. The soul returned quickly, this time as a newborn who would grow up in the very household still mourning its former life. It's almost impossible to hear stories like these and not begin to look around you differently. The people in your life, your friends, your family, even strangers, they could be souls you've danced with before, souls who left and returned on a timeline far more intelligent than human reason can grasp. And maybe you feel it. Maybe you've met someone and felt an instant connection, deeper than logic, stronger than time. Maybe you've said, "It feels like I've known you forever," and laughed it off. But what if it wasn't just a feeling? What if it was a remembrance echoing across lifetimes? The soul, after all, remembers what the mind forgets. So when the sleeping prophet spoke of reincarnation, it wasn't as a theory, it was as a witness, as someone who had seen what lies between the end of one life and the beginning of another. His voice was calm, steady, unshaken by the weight of the truths he carried. And one of the greatest among them was this: there is no single answer to the question of when a soul returns. There is only a pattern, a dance between readiness, purpose, and divine timing. The moment you passed from this life, your journey wouldn't stop. You would awaken elsewhere, and from that space, you would begin again, but only when the next path was ready for you, and when you were ready for it. This truth brings comfort, not just in knowing that your loved ones continue on, but in realizing that you do, too. Your soul is not bound to a single timeline. It is eternal, moving in and out of form like breath, pausing only to listen, to heal, and to decide when it is ready to return to the dance once more. And if you're here now, reading this, asking these questions, feeling the quiet tug of something familiar, it's likely because you've been here before, not just in this life, but in others. And perhaps, just perhaps, this moment is part of your soul remembering its own return. What if I told you that some souls barely wait at all? That for certain spirits, the time between death and rebirth is not measured in decades or even years, but in months, weeks, sometimes just days. While some souls linger in higher realms, reviewing their life and preparing for the next chapter, others return almost instantly, pulled back to earth as if by a magnet. Why? Because something remains undone, something is left incomplete, and the soul knows there's no time to waste. You may have felt it before. A child born into a family, and somehow everyone whispers the same thing. She has her grandmother's eyes, or he behaves just like your father used to. It's more than resemblance. It's energy, it's presence. It's as if someone returned, not metaphorically, but literally, because sometimes that's exactly what's happening. A soul re-enters the same family line, looping back into the bloodline it just left. A mother may die and return as her own granddaughter. A grandfather may reincarnate as the youngest son in the very home he once lived in. These stories aren't just folklore. They're signs of something deeper, a spiritual urgency that transcends time. This kind of immediate return is often driven by what spiritual traditions call unfinished business. When a soul exits the body with unresolved emotions, unspoken truths, or incomplete lessons, it can feel a strong gravitational pull back into the earthly realm. It's not punishment, it's purpose. The soul isn't being forced, it's choosing to finish what it started, to reconnect, to fulfill the agreements it made before that life even began. You see, before you were born, your soul didn't come in randomly, it entered with intention, with contracts, with a blueprint. You chose your family, your struggles, your gifts, your timing. And sometimes, when a life ends too soon, or ends with something crucial left undone, the soul returns quickly to complete that design. It's like an artist stepping away from a painting mid-stroke, only to realize moments later that the masterpiece is still unfinished. These rapid reincarnations are often tied to intense karmic bonds, souls that have danced together across lifetimes, lovers, siblings, enemies, protectors. When one soul leaves while still deeply entangled in another's growth, it may return quickly to maintain the bond. It's why you might feel like someone left too soon, but still sense them around you. Maybe they never left. Maybe they're already back. And it's not always in the same role. Sometimes, a mother becomes the daughter, a son becomes the uncle, a best friend returns as your child. The roles shift, but the connection deepens. These urgent karmic ties bring the soul back with astonishing speed, driven by a promise made at the soul level. I'm not done with you yet. It's not about obligation, it's about love, about completion, about evolution. There are cultures across the world that not only believe in this, but expect it. In parts of West Africa, families often consult with diviners when a child is born, asking if the spirit is an ancestor returned. In some Tibetan traditions, high lamas are located and identified in the bodies of young children just months after their predecessor has passed. In indigenous communities from the Americas to the Arctic, stories of elders reincarnating into newborns are told not as mystical legends, but as lived reality. So how does a soul know when to return quickly? It listens, not with ears, but with energy. It feels the pull of unresolved love, the weight of promises made but not kept. And sometimes, it hears the call of those left behind, calling out in grief, in longing, in deep spiritual yearning. That call can create a bridge between worlds. When the living cry out in prayer, in tears, in silent conversations with the dead, the soul can respond, not with signs or symbols, but with embodiment. It chooses to return and continue the story from a new page. But there's something else: soul agreements. Before incarnation, souls often make sacred contracts with one another, agreements to help, challenge, heal, or awaken each other in this lifetime. These aren't casual arrangements, they're spiritually binding, so when one soul departs before fulfilling its role, that contract echoes through the ether, calling it back, quickly, powerfully. It's why you may feel an uncanny recognition in a child's gaze, why a baby born months after a loved one's death seems to carry their spirit. It's not your imagination, it's memory, soul memory. And while this idea may seem mysterious, even unbelievable, it explains something deeply human: our relentless need for closure. Our intuition that something is unfinished, that a goodbye didn't feel final, that a connection wasn't meant to end. The truth is, it didn't. It transformed. And often, it returns. But fast reincarnations aren't always about others. Sometimes, they're about the soul itself. A spirit may return quickly because it is eager to evolve, to learn a particular lesson while the energy is still fresh, to re-enter the world while the karmic landscape is still familiar. This is especially true for souls who died suddenly or traumatically. They may re-enter in a gentle or similar environment to confront what was left behind: grief, guilt, fear, or a need for healing. The soul seeks completion, not for punishment, but for peace. This rapid return can even be part of a soul's mastery. Advanced souls, those who've incarnated many times and awakened to their purpose, may choose to reincarnate quickly as part of a divine mission. These souls don't come to learn, but to teach. They may return with memories intact, gifts activated, and a sense of urgency. Their arrival is not random, it's strategic, timed to support the awakening of others. Of course, not all rapid reincarnations are remembered, but sometimes clues appear. A child who speaks of places they've never visited, a sudden fear or talent that emerges with no explanation, a strong bond to a grandparent they've never met. These are not coincidences. They are breadcrumbs of the soul's journey, signs that something ancient has returned in new form. You may have even felt it in yourself: a pull to a certain era, a language, a person you've just met, a sense that you're living out a continuation of a story that started long ago. That feeling isn't fantasy, it's remembrance. And the more you trust it, the more it reveals. So if you've ever wondered why some souls come back so fast, the answer is both simple and sacred. They have work to do, love to fulfill, growth to complete, agreements to honor. And sometimes they come back because you asked them to. You, in your grief or longing, whispered into the silence, and the soul heard you. Because in the grand tapestry of existence, time is elastic, but connection is eternal. And when the soul feels the call of love, of purpose, of promise, it doesn't wait, it returns. What if I told you that some souls wait hundreds of years before returning to this world? That while you may count time by days, years, and decades, the soul counts in something far more mysterious, in readiness, in vibration, in sacred alignment. You may have imagined reincarnation as a revolving door. One life ends, another begins. But the truth is, for many souls, there is a long silence in between. A silence so deep and so vast that it stretches beyond human comprehension, a pause that can last not just decades, but centuries. This long space between lives is not a punishment. It is a sanctuary, a spiritual holding ground where healing takes place at a level that goes far beyond anything you've ever experienced on Earth. When a soul has lived through a traumatic or intensely karmic lifetime, it cannot simply jump back into the physical world. It must rest, it must recover. Just like a body needs time to heal after injury, the soul requires space to mend after deep spiritual wounds. Imagine carrying centuries of pain, betrayals, regrets, guilt from actions you can no longer undo. Or imagine dying in war, in hatred, in sorrow, or with the weight of unfinished promises. That energy doesn't vanish. It stays within your field, not as a punishment, but as a lesson, waiting to be integrated. And in the realms between lifetimes, that's exactly what happens. You begin to review everything, not just what you did, but how it affected others. How the energy you created rippled across timelines and into the hearts of others. This review isn't about guilt, it's about growth. In that sacred space between lives, you are shown every experience through the lens of love, and yet, even in that loving awareness, the truth can sting. You begin to understand the complexity of your choices. You see how even small actions shaped the emotional journeys of others, and through this understanding, you begin the work of restoration. But restoration cannot be rushed. The higher realms do not push souls back into incarnation before they are truly ready. There is no deadline, there is only divine timing. And sometimes, that timing requires centuries. During this period, you may work with guides, soul groups, and mentors. You may dwell in realms of light, or walk through shadowy corridors of memory to reclaim lost parts of yourself. You may relive your past lives, not as punishment, but as practice for what you must still master. This waiting zone is real. It's not purgatory, not exile. It is a compassionate space, created to allow your soul to recalibrate. It is here that the blueprint of your next life is prepared. But before that can happen, the soul must become clear, free from the emotional and energetic debris of its past. And some debris takes longer to clear than others. There are souls who lived hundreds of years ago and still haven't returned, not because they can't, but because they've chosen to wait. Some are waiting for the right conditions to be born into, a family dynamic that will allow them to resolve old karma. Others are waiting for the world to shift, waiting for a specific era, location, or vibration that will match their purpose. And then there are those who are still learning, still growing, in the invisible schools of the spirit world. You may wonder, why not return sooner? Why wait? But you must understand, the soul is not in a rush. It doesn't fear time like the ego does. It doesn't measure worth by productivity. It knows that every moment spent in spiritual reflection is just as sacred as the moment spent in physical form. In fact, some of the most powerful transformations happen between lives, in that silent realm where nothing is expected of you except to see clearly, to feel fully, and to remember who you really are. There are even souls who spend centuries helping others during their in-between. These are the guides, the unseen hands that help new souls cross over or prepare for their next journey. Their own return is postponed not out of delay, but out of service. They become part of the divine infrastructure that supports the evolution of others. This too is a choice, a sacred one. But there are also souls who cannot yet return because the karma of their next life is not yet aligned. Maybe the people they need to meet aren't born yet. Maybe the events that will catalyze their growth are still decades away. In these cases, the soul waits, not in boredom, not in limbo, but in trust. Trust that the perfect moment will come, that the tapestry of time will weave the right conditions for their return. It's important to remember that reincarnation is not mechanical. It is an art, a dance, a sacred rhythm. Every return is timed with precision. And for those souls who have accumulated great weight in their past lives, more time is often needed. Some lifetimes leave the soul fragmented, confused, or deeply wounded. These souls spend longer in the waiting zone, not because they are lesser, but because they are brave enough to face themselves completely before beginning again. This space between lives is often described as peaceful, luminous, and filled with love. And yet, it is also a place of deep, internal work. Here, the soul strips away illusion. It sheds its earthly personality and reconnects with its true essence. It begins to understand the arc of its many lives, and in doing so, gains insight into the next chapter it must live. There is no shame in taking time. Some of the most ancient souls you encounter in this life may have waited lifetimes to arrive here. Their silence between lives was not absence, but preparation. And when they returned, they brought with them wisdom that feels timeless, not because they are better, but because they honored their own process. You may even feel, deep within yourself, that you have waited a long time to be here, that this life is not just another life, but a significant one. Maybe you've felt the heaviness of old memories that don't belong to this era. Maybe you've looked around at the world and felt older than your years, more tired than your timeline should allow. These are hints, signs that your soul has been in the waiting zone for a long time and has chosen now, for reasons far beyond your conscious mind, to return. So the next time you wonder why someone hasn't come back, or why you feel like you were gone for longer than you can explain, remember this: the soul returns only when the time is right, not a moment before. And whether it takes a year, a decade, or a millennium, that timing is always sacred. Because in the realm of the soul, healing is more important than speed, wisdom is more important than repetition, and every return is a rebirth not just of form, but of light. What if I told you that your soul isn't just drifting through lifetimes like a leaf on the wind, tossed wherever fate decides? What if your return to this world, the when, where, and how, wasn't left to chance but crafted with careful intent? There's a question most seekers eventually ask: can you choose when to reincarnate? And the answer, like many spiritual truths, is not a simple yes or no. It's layered, sacred, profound. Many spiritual traditions speak of the soul as a sovereign being, conscious, eternal, and deeply involved in its journey through lifetimes. You are not just a passive passenger being shuffled from one life to the next. You are a creator, a collaborator. But even in that autonomy, there are laws, cosmic laws, that shape the space in which your choices can be made. Just like here on Earth you have free will within certain physical and social boundaries, the soul too navigates a realm of divine order. There is choice, but it unfolds within a greater harmony. Advanced souls, those who have evolved through many incarnations and awakened to their deeper essence, often do have the ability to choose. These are not beginners in the school of Earth. These are the ones who have remembered who they are. They choose their families not based on comfort, but on what will trigger growth. They choose timelines that align with collective shifts. They choose missions that will ripple across generations. And they do so not from ego, but from purpose. But even these souls are not exempt from spiritual law. There is a timing that must be honored, energetic cycles that must complete, lessons that must be absorbed in the in-between spaces. The spiritual realm isn't governed by urgency, it's guided by resonance. If your soul still carries unresolved patterns, if your frequency hasn't matched the next lesson's requirements, you won't yet be aligned for return. Not because you're being denied, but because you're still preparing. Some describe this like a cosmic airport. Souls arrive and wait for the perfect alignment, the right family, the right moment in history, the right karmic conditions. It's not always about desire, it's about readiness. You may want to return, but if your soul hasn't integrated what it just experienced, the gate remains closed. Likewise, the conditions for your next life may not yet be ready. The people you made soul contracts with may still be preparing their roles. The world you need to be born into may not have taken shape yet, so you wait. Not in punishment, but in precision. Then there are the moments when you can choose. When your spirit is clear, when your growth is balanced, when the universe opens a doorway and says, now. This is where many souls become architects of their own incarnation. They gather with guides, they review timelines, they explore possible lives, they feel, sense, and test different outcomes. You might imagine it as a spiritual council or a planning chamber, but it's more than a metaphor. It's a sacred meeting of intention, intuition, and destiny. And within it, you choose, not just when to return, but how deeply you'll forget. Because choosing when to reincarnate also means choosing to forget, at least temporarily. You choose the veil. You choose the limitations. You choose to dive back into the illusion so that your growth will be authentic. Without that forgetting, the lessons wouldn't carry the same weight. The triumph wouldn't be as real. The awakening wouldn't be as earned. And so even when you choose your life, you do so knowing you will forget that you chose it, until you remember again. But this autonomy grows with evolution. Not every soul has the same level of choice. Just as a child in school doesn't select their curriculum until they've mastered the basics, Younger souls often reincarnate under the guidance of higher beings, guardians, elders, or even their own higher self. These choices are still loving, still intentional, but they're not fully self-directed. They are coordinated to ensure the soul gets what it needs, not always what it wants. This is why some lives feel repetitive, why certain patterns seem to follow you across lifetimes. If a soul is still entangled in desire, fear, or resistance, it may be guided back into similar experiences, not as punishment, but as opportunity. A recurring lesson. A chance to choose differently. The soul doesn't regress, it cycles, spirals, and each return offers a chance to evolve. And yet, even within that framework, something incredible remains true. You always have a say. Even when you're not ready to return, even when the laws of karma must be honored, your willingness, your openness, your intention influences everything. You're not a prisoner of some cosmic machine. You're a participant in a divine dance. The more you awaken, the more your say becomes sovereign. In rare cases, some souls refuse to return. They've seen too much, felt too much, or fear too deeply. They may cling to the peace of the spirit realm, avoiding the weight of earthly life. And while the spiritual world holds infinite compassion for these souls, it also honors the call of evolution. Eventually, even the most reluctant soul must return, not by force, but through the inner knowing that Earth still holds something vital for their becoming. Then there are the souls who return before they're truly ready. Sometimes, intense desire or attachment draws them back too soon. They reincarnate rapidly, without proper integration, and as a result, they carry heaviness, confusion, or energetic distortion into their next life. These souls may feel like they don't fully belong, like they've been dropped into a reality they weren't prepared for, because in a way, they have, and yet even this is part of the journey. Even misaligned returns carry lessons. The soul can recalibrate, heal, reorient. So the question remains, can you choose when to reincarnate? The answer lives in your current awareness. If you're still ruled by impulse, the answer is not yet. If you're awakening to the deeper laws of existence, the answer is partially. And if you've begun to remember that you are more than your name, your story, or your body, if you've begun to live from that remembrance, then yes, you are stepping into the sacred power of choice. But here's the most important truth. The choices you make now shape the choices you'll have later. How you live in this moment, this body, this breath, determines the energy you carry forward. You are writing your future reincarnations not in some distant afterlife, but in the very way you love, forgive, grow, and serve today. You are laying the tracks of your soul's next return with every decision you make. So, live as if you're choosing now, because you are. Live with the awareness that each thought creates momentum, that each act of courage, compassion, and clarity expands your sovereignty. That when the time comes to choose again, you will not choose from confusion or fear, but from freedom. Because the truth is, you've always had more power than you realized. You're not just a soul who reincarnates, you're a soul who creates, shapes, designs, and yes, you're a soul who decides. What if I told you that not every soul is eager to return? That some remain in the unseen realms, not because they are forbidden from coming back, but because something within them holds them in place, something invisible, yet deeply powerful. When we think of the spirit world, we often imagine it as peaceful, a kind of resting place before the next chapter begins. But what most never speak of is the truth that some souls get stuck. Not by chains or force, but by their own emotional weight, regret, fear, guilt, and the attachments they couldn't let go of in life. The soul is light by nature. It's made to move, to evolve, to reincarnate. But just like heavy baggage keeps a balloon from rising, unresolved energy can hold a soul close to the ether, drifting, unable to move forward. These aren't evil souls. They're not being punished. They're simply caught in the inertia of their own past. They linger in places you cannot see, wrapped in loops of memory, longing, or refusal. They've left their body, but not their story. Regret is one of the strongest anchors. It keeps a soul replaying moments over and over. Conversations never had, forgiveness never offered, chances never taken. That regret creates a loop, a cycle of reflection that becomes harder and harder to break out of. Some souls become obsessed with what they didn't do, the people they hurt, the promises they failed to keep, or the love they lost too soon. They hover near those they left behind, clinging to relationships that have already shifted, trying to undo what can no longer be undone. But life, once past, cannot be rewound. It must be learned from. Yet until that soul accepts what was, it cannot step into what will be. Guilt is heavier still. It sinks deep into the soul's energetic field, distorting its sense of worthiness. Some souls believe they don't deserve to return. They judge themselves more harshly than any divine being ever could. They imagine their past sins make them unworthy of a second chance. This illusion of unworthiness becomes a self-created prison. The truth is, no soul is denied rebirth because of guilt, but many deny it to themselves, not realizing they are the ones holding the key. Then there is fear. Fear of returning, fear of pain, fear of failing again. Some souls remember what they endured in their last life, the heartbreak, the suffering, the betrayal, the loneliness. Even in the spirit world, the memory of those feelings can linger like a shadow. And so the soul resists. It says, "Not yet." It holds itself back, waiting for safety, waiting for courage. But the soul's growth requires re-entry into the world of contrast, and that contrast is never entirely comfortable. To live again means to feel again, and that, for some, is terrifying. There's also another kind of attachment that keeps a soul from returning: the addiction to earthly pleasures. For some, the material world becomes an obsession. They loved the feeling of power, of sensation, of wealth, of control. And when death takes those things away, the soul doesn't easily let go. It lingers, it watches, it tries to influence. These are the souls who refuse to detach from their earthly identity. They see themselves as they were, not as they are. They don't accept that the story has ended, and without that acceptance, they can't begin a new one. Spiritual inertia is more subtle, but equally binding. It's the soul that grows complacent in the spirit realm, that says, "I'll return later," and then forgets why it ever wanted to come back. It's a kind of energetic drifting, comfortable, aimless, soft. These souls have no pressing karma to resolve, no urgent need to return. And yet, their growth has stalled. They may spend centuries in beautiful, dreamlike states, but without the friction of a human life, without the resistance that polishes the soul like stone in a river, they stop evolving. Eventually, they must return, but spiritual inertia often delays that calling far longer than expected. Then there's resistance, pure refusal. Some souls, upon death, awaken to the truth of the reincarnation cycle and simply say, no. They don't want to play the game anymore. They feel tired, disillusioned, angry. They may have believed in a final resting place and now feel betrayed to learn that evolution continues. These souls stand at the threshold of rebirth and resist the pull. But the universe doesn't force. It waits. It offers understanding. It allows the soul its defiance, until the fire of curiosity, or longing, or compassion reignites. And it always does. You must understand, the soul cannot be forced forward. Even the highest beings of light do not push. They guide, they invite, they illuminate the path, but the steps must be taken freely. And when a soul chooses not to step, it remains in the in-between, not as punishment, as preparation. Some souls stay close to the earth plane. They visit loved ones in dreams, nudge their way into waking life through signs or synchronicities. You may have felt one near you, a whisper just before waking, a scent with no source, a sudden emotion you couldn't explain. These are the souls who haven't fully moved on. They're watching, waiting, hoping to resolve something, perhaps through you. Other souls drift farther, into realms you can't imagine. Some enter learning spaces that feel like vast temples of light. Others rest in stillness, watching timelines unfold like rivers beneath them. But even here, even in these luminous places, a soul can remain stuck if it refuses to release what binds it. The past, when clung to too tightly, becomes a chain, and no matter how beautiful the view, a chain is still a chain. Sometimes, entire groups of souls wait together. Families, soul tribes, they choose not to incarnate until the whole group is ready. They synchronize their returns with astounding precision, so that certain lessons can be lived together again. But if even one soul hesitates, out of fear, guilt, or resistance, it can delay the return of the others. The web is more interconnected than we realize. But nothing stays stuck forever. Even the most resistant souls eventually soften. Time, compassion, and the wisdom of higher guides work gently on them like waves on stone. They begin to remember why they came in the first place. They remember the love they once felt for this world. They remember the courage that brought them into human form, again and again. And slowly, the anchors loosen. When the time is right, they begin the journey back. A soul that once resisted may return stronger than ever, wiser, deeper, more compassionate. Because in truth, the time a soul spends stuck is never wasted. It becomes part of its evolution. Even stillness has a purpose. So if you've ever felt that someone you love hasn't returned, or if you feel like you took longer to come back than you expected, now you know why. It wasn't failure. It wasn't punishment. It was simply the soul honoring its own process, its own pace, its own healing. The path back to earth is not always quick, but when the soul is ready, when the regret has been faced, the guilt has been forgiven, the fear has been soothed, and the attachments have been released, it returns. Not as who it was, but as who it is becoming. Lighter, clearer, free. What if I told you that before you ever took your first breath, before you even had a name, your soul was already making plans? That long before your eyes opened to this world, you sat at a kind of cosmic table, reviewing timelines, studying potential lives, and meeting with other souls who would one day become your family, your lovers, your greatest challenges, and your deepest healers. Because every soul that enters this world does so with intention, with a blueprint, with a contract that stretches far beyond the physical. You didn't just fall into this life, you agreed to it. The concept of soul contracts and pre-birth planning may sound mystical, even surreal, but once you feel into it, it starts to explain so much. Why certain people feel like you've known them forever. Why specific experiences keep repeating no matter how hard you try to avoid them. Why your life feels less like a coincidence and more like a script with sacred lessons hidden in every chapter. These patterns, these relationships, this path, it was designed, not as punishment, not as fate in the rigid sense, but as a living, breathing roadmap for your soul's evolution. Before incarnation, souls enter a kind of vibrational space that transcends language. It's not a meeting room, but a field of understanding, a realm of clarity where the soul remembers everything. Not just from the most recent life, but from lifetimes of learning, mistakes, triumphs, and growth. And in this space, you begin to sense what still remains unlearned, what still needs to be healed, what karmic threads still tug at your energy. And from that awareness, a new life begins to take shape. But you don't plan it alone. This is where the idea of soul groups and sacred agreements enters. You're not here by yourself. You're surrounded by souls who have traveled with you through lifetimes over and over again. Some you've loved, some you've lost, some you've fought, and some you've healed. In the in-between, you find one another again, and together you form agreements. Some will enter as your protectors, some as your triggers, some will break your heart so you can open it wider. Some will lift you when you forget how to rise. Every encounter holds purpose. Every bond carries a vibration of recognition. These contracts are not binding in the human sense. They are agreements of intention, deep soul-level promises made with love, even if they involve hardship. For example, you may choose to be born to a parent who abandons you, not because your soul wants to suffer, but because it needs to learn how to cultivate strength from abandonment, how to find unconditional love within yourself. A soul may volunteer to be your enemy, to mirror your shadows, to help you confront what you've buried. Others agree to be the light that pulls you through the darkest moments. No role is more sacred than another, but coordinating these contracts isn't instant. Some lives take decades, human decades, to align, not because the universe is slow, but because the conditions must be perfect. If one soul in the group isn't ready, if one karmic piece hasn't yet clicked into place, if the world isn't yet in the right energetic state to support your mission, then your soul waits. You may feel this as a delay, or even injustice, but from the soul's perspective, it's sacred timing, precision, preparation. You don't plant a seed before the soil is ready. You wait for the season of blooming. Imagine a soul preparing to incarnate with a mission to help shift global consciousness. That mission might require being born into a specific lineage at a certain time in history, with certain parents who themselves had to go through their own healing first. Perhaps the mother wasn't ready to conceive. Perhaps the father needed to clear a karmic debt. Perhaps the best friend who would later awaken you still had another lifetime to finish before they could meet you. All of these moving parts must align, and they do, not through luck, but through vibration. That's why the soul doesn't rush. It returns only when everything is in place. Sometimes, multiple souls in a group must reincarnate together for the blueprint to activate. Think of it like a symphony. No matter how beautiful a solo instrument may be, the full impact requires every player to show up in harmony. A healer may return, but without the wounded friend to guide, the lesson remains dormant. A teacher may be born, but the student they're destined to awaken might not arrive for years. And so they wait, not idly, but in trust. In these moments of waiting, the soul is not asleep. It's integrating. It's watching. It's gently guiding the pieces into place. And once everything is ready, the timeline, the geography, the relationships, the ancestral codes, the soul steps through the veil once more and enters the body that was chosen long before conception. Not every detail is predetermined. Free will still reigns. But the foundational energies, the major milestones, the soul family contracts, those are etched into the essence of your being. Sometimes, a soul will incarnate, even knowing the life will be short, perhaps just a few years, perhaps even moments. These are not accidents. These souls often come with precise missions, to catalyze growth in the lives of those they touch. A baby born only to pass days later may have agreed to that life to open a parent's heart, or to redirect their path. In the realm of spirit, it's not about quantity of time, it's about impact, and impact is eternal. There are also lives chosen for rest. For simplicity, not every incarnation is about drama, trauma, or ascension. Sometimes, a soul has been through enough and chooses a gentle life, a quiet existence, to recover, to remember joy. Other times, the soul takes on a heavy life to transmute ancestral pain, not just for itself, but for the lineage. These decisions aren't made casually, they are infused with divine wisdom. So when you ask yourself why your life looks the way it does, why certain people came and others left, why you feel drawn to places, talents, or wounds you can't explain, remember this: you planned it. Not alone, not as punishment, but as a powerful act of soul-level devotion to your own becoming. The blueprint of your life is not a cage, it's a compass. And while you may not remember every agreement, you are always living within the frequency of them. That's why certain decisions feel heavier than others. That's why some moments feel like crossroads, even if they look ordinary. That's why, deep down, when you are honoring your contract, and when you are not. But nothing is fixed. You can renegotiate, you can awaken, you can shift timelines. The universe is not rigid, it's responsive. If you walk your path with awareness, with love, with integrity, you activate dormant parts of the plan. You call forth the allies who have been waiting. You shorten cycles. You soften karma. You evolve faster. You begin to remember that this life is not happening to you. It's unfolding through you. Because long ago, before the world knew your name, you sat in the silence of spirit and said, yes, yes to this body, yes to this path, yes to the souls who would walk beside you. You didn't come here by accident, you came here by agreement. And every step you take toward remembering that, every breath you take in alignment with that truth, brings you closer to the soul you came here to be. What if I told you that everything you believe about time is only true here, in this physical realm, bound by gravity and sunrise and the ticking of a clock? What if, in the world your soul returns to after death, time behaves like water, bending, stretching, vanishing altogether? One of the greatest illusions of this human life is the idea that time is fixed, that it moves forward at a constant pace, marking the beginning and end of everything. But in the spirit realm, that illusion dissolves, and what you're left with is something far more fluid, far more mysterious, and far more liberating. Imagine for a moment that you pass from this life and enter the in-between. You step into a place where there are no clocks on walls, no aging skin, no deadlines to meet. In this space, you are not measured by birthdays or calendars, you are not late or early, you are simply present. For some souls, the moment they cross over feels like blinking. One instant they are here, and the next, they are floating in a place where all their lifetimes exist simultaneously. For others, the journey feels vast, like drifting through eons of light, absorbing the echoes of everything they've ever been. 100 years may pass on earth, yet to the soul it feels like a breath. Or, a single year in human time may feel like an eternity when the soul is immersed in healing, remembering, and reviewing. This is because time in the spirit realm is not linear. It is not horizontal, like a road that stretches from birth to death. It is vertical, spherical, multidimensional. Past, present, and future exist as one expansive now. Your consciousness, unbound from the limits of the physical body, can move freely between moments like pages in a book that you can read in any order. You can revisit a memory from 3 lives ago, stand in the energy of a moment from your current incarnation, and glimpse the potential of your next lifetime, all at once. To the soul, these moments are not separate. They are part of a greater tapestry, unfolding within the eternal present. This is the essence of timeless consciousness. It's not about existing in a void, it's about existing beyond the constructs we've created to measure experience. You, as a soul, are not aging. You're not racing against the clock, you're evolving, and evolution happens at the speed of alignment, not at the speed of seconds and minutes. This is why some souls feel as though they've returned to Earth in the blink of an eye, even if centuries have passed. A soul that left the physical realm in the year 1200s may reincarnate in the 2000s and feel as if it just departed yesterday. Others may have passed recently, yet in the spirit realm, their journey has felt immense, as though they've wandered through vast oceans of time, gathering wisdom, releasing burdens, preparing for their return. The way the soul experiences time is deeply tied to what it's processing, what it's healing, and what it's expanding into. The density of earth makes time feel heavy, real, inescapable. But when the soul sheds its body, it sheds that density too. It moves into a frequency where awareness becomes the only measure of movement. What you're learning, what you're integrating, how deeply you're connecting with the essence of your being. All of that shapes your experience of time far more than a ticking clock ever could. And here's what makes it even more fascinating. In the spirit world, you are not just in time. You are outside of it. You begin to sense that your soul has always existed, not since birth, not since some distant starting point, always. You were never truly born, you only took form. And you will never truly die, you will only change shape. This realization is not philosophical, it is experiential. You feel it. You become aware of your own eternity, not as a concept, but as a truth so intimate, it cannot be unlearned. This is why, when a soul chooses to reincarnate, it is not returning from a specific number of years away. It is returning from a state of readiness. Its perception of time has been completely detached from the ticking world it once knew. A soul may feel called to re-enter the physical plane the moment its next incarnation is available, regardless of how much human time has passed. Or, it may remain in the spirit world, existing in dimensions where linear time doesn't apply, waiting for other souls to align, for energies to shift, or for deeper inner clarity to emerge. In some cases, you may feel like your life is moving faster than it should, that time is slipping through your hands. This is often because your soul is still partially in touch with its eternal awareness. It remembers the fluidity of time. It knows that what matters is not the years you've lived, but the consciousness you bring to each moment. That strange sense of time speeding up is not just a feeling, it's a reflection of your expanding awareness. Likewise, you might feel as though certain moments drag endlessly. These are often moments when your soul is being stretched, challenged, or confronted with old karmic patterns. The spirit realm reflects this too. Periods of intense learning can feel elongated, even timeless, not as a form of punishment, but because the soul is being given the full space to evolve without the pressure of linear urgency. When people ask, how long does it take for a soul to return? They are asking a question shaped by Earth's timeline, but the soul doesn't answer in numbers, it answers in vibrations, in wholeness, in clarity. The real question is, when is the soul aligned enough to return? And that answer cannot be measured in human terms. There are also times when souls move in such high frequencies that they can influence multiple incarnations at once. These are advanced souls, multidimensional, deeply awakened. They may be guiding several lives across different time periods simultaneously. From your human perspective, it seems impossible. But from the soul's view, all time is accessible, all timelines are living, and presence is the only constant. This is the mystery you came here to remember, that you are more than a traveler through time, you are a creator within it. Time is not your master, it is your mirror, it reflects your state of being. And when you no longer fear it, you begin to see it for what it truly is, a tool, a classroom, a passing breeze. And when this life ends, and you return to that space between worlds, you will remember what your soul has always known. That time is just the canvas, but you, eternal and unshaken, are the artist. What if I told you that not every soul is eager to come back? That beyond this life, in the stillness between lifetimes, there are souls who hesitate, who pause in the threshold of return and whisper, not yet. Not because they've forgotten their mission, but because Earth, for all its beauty and potential, also carries pain. And sometimes, that pain leaves a mark so deep that the soul would rather stay in the luminous quiet of the spirit realm than return to the shadows of a world it remembers all too vividly. It's easy to assume that the soul is always rushing to incarnate again, as if rebirth is just a revolving door. But in truth, many souls resist. Some remember trauma in the body, the feel of war, the sting of betrayal, the emptiness of abandonment. These memories may not carry over into waking consciousness, but within the soul, the imprint remains. When a soul leaves one life with heavy grief, deep regret, or the lingering taste of cruelty, it can create a hesitation so profound that the soul simply chooses to wait, not just for years, but for centuries. Some even vow never to return. Others are not weighed down by trauma, but lifted by peace. They find themselves in realms of light, pure presence, communion with other souls, love that has no conditions or limits. In these higher dimensions, there is no pain, no confusion, no separation, just clarity, connection. A sense of home so profound that the thought of returning to the density of Earth feels almost unbearable. These are the souls who fall in love with the light, and who need time to remember that the Earth is also made of that same light, just veiled in form. In both cases, the soul does not refuse out of rebellion, it refuses out of fear. Fear of being trapped again in limitation, fear of making the same mistakes, fear of failing to awaken, yet again. These are not dramatic denials, they are quiet resistances that echo like soft ripples through the spirit world. Some souls simply say, "I'm not ready," and for a time, that choice is honored. But even in this sacred pause, something deeper begins to stir. You see, the soul may resist, but evolution never sleeps. There is a current that flows through all of creation, a gentle yet undeniable force that urges everything forward. And so, while a soul may rest, hide, or delay, that current eventually reaches them. Not with force, but with remembrance. Like a distant melody that grows louder over time, the call to return becomes impossible to ignore. In these moments, spirit guides often appear, not as rulers or enforcers, but as loving companions who have walked with the soul for lifetimes. These guides speak not with pressure, but with truth. They remind the soul of its purpose, its courage, its original yes. They show glimpses of what is possible in the next life, the healing that can unfold, the joy waiting to be remembered. And often, they bring messages from other souls, souls who are waiting for them. A future daughter, a partner, a friend, a teacher. These connections, these sacred contracts, begin to pull on the soul's heart like threads of golden light. Sometimes the guides say, "Look at how far you've come. You don't have to relive the past. You can choose differently now." Other times, they simply hold space, knowing that no soul can be forced, only reminded, only invited. And when the soul begins to shift, when the resistance softens even slightly, that's when the planning begins. Slowly, carefully, a new path is mapped, not to repeat the old, but to transcend it. The soul is never pushed into a lifetime it cannot handle. The universe, in its infinite intelligence, only opens doors that the soul is ready to walk through. And so, when the return does happen, it's not out of pressure. It's out of readiness. The soul remembers that even the pain of earth cannot dim the light it carries within. There are stories, quiet ones, of children who seem to carry immense sorrow from the moment they are born. They look out at the world with eyes too old for their age. They speak of missing people they've never met. They carry fears that have no earthly explanation. These may be the souls who hesitated, who weren't sure if they wanted to return, and did so with a cautious heart. And yet, as they grow, something shifts. They begin to laugh. They learn to trust. They love again. And with every step, they remember that earth can be beautiful too. Some souls, on the other hand, come back ready. After long stretches in the spirit realm, after deep healing and reflection, they return with clarity. These are often the souls who are quiet in childhood but wise beyond measure, who carry a natural compassion, a deep sense of justice, or a longing to serve. They remember what it's like to resist coming back, and now they're here, fully present, committed to walking with purpose. But even then, the return is not always easy. The veil of forgetting is thick. The soul must navigate a world that often teaches disconnection instead of unity, fear instead of love, survival instead of truth. And so, even the bravest souls sometimes falter. But the difference is, they remember how to rise, not because it's easy, but because they've chosen this path with full awareness. So, what does it mean for you? It means that if you've ever felt like you didn't want to be here, if you've struggled to connect with life, if you've carried fears you can't explain, it may be that your soul once hesitated too, and that's okay. The fact that you are here now means your soul said, yes, even if it was a hesitant yes, even if it was a whispered one. You are here because something within you knew it was time. And if you've ever lost someone too soon, and you wonder why they haven't returned, maybe their soul is still healing, still choosing, still remembering why Earth is worth coming back to. And when they do return, they will come back stronger, wiser, more ready to fulfill what was once left undone. Because every soul, no matter how long it waits, eventually feels the call to evolve, to complete, to love in new ways, to rise again through matter and time and memory. And no amount of fear or resistance can stop that sacred becoming. So, yes, some souls refuse to return. But even in their refusal, the divine is still at work, gently guiding, patiently loving. And when the time is right, they will return, not because they must, but because deep down, they remember that every journey back to Earth is a journey back to the self. What if I told you that every moment of your life, every thought, every action, every intention, creates a vibration that never disappears? That the universe records it, not as a judge or punisher, but as a mirror, reflecting that vibration back to you when the time is right. This is the heart of karma, not a system of punishment, but a sacred mechanism of alignment. When people hear the word karma, they often imagine retribution, cosmic payback, a balancing of scales that feels like justice or revenge. But karma is neither cruel nor kind, it is precise. It is the natural law of resonance. And its role in reincarnation is deeper than most ever realize. When a soul prepares to return to Earth, it doesn't simply roll the dice and land in a random life. It returns according to the energetic imprints it carries from lifetimes before. These imprints are not just emotional or psychological, they are vibrational. They determine the soul's next lessons, its opportunities, its challenges, and most importantly, when it will return. Karma influences timing with astounding accuracy. If a soul carries unresolved karma, unfinished contracts, debts of the heart, unlearned lessons, it cannot simply bypass them. The soul must wait until the perfect conditions arise for those energies to be addressed. That might mean waiting for certain people to incarnate, for certain collective energies to emerge, or for the soul itself to mature enough to face what it once avoided. But karma doesn't only delay return, sometimes it hastens it. When a soul has left behind a powerful bond, especially one filled with pain, love, or betrayal, it may be magnetically pulled back to resolve that relationship. The urgency of that karmic entanglement can shorten the time between lives. Imagine two souls locked in a cycle of hurt and healing. They return again and again, drawn back not by force, but by the magnetic pull of unfinished emotion. Their incarnations become loops of closure and awakening, sometimes tender, sometimes chaotic, but always aiming for resolution. Then there are souls who have cleared much of their karmic load. These souls are not burdened by the past in the same way. Their returns are more spacious, more intentional. They are no longer pushed by the need to balance something. They are pulled by the desire to serve, to learn, to assist others. These souls can wait longer between lives, not because they are better, but because their path is no longer tangled in the urgency of reparation. They return when the moment is ripe, when the earth calls them back with a purpose that aligns to their frequency, not their debt. And yet, even these evolved souls are not exempt from karma. The law applies to all, because it is not moral, it is mechanical, it simply matches energy with energy. A thought of hate ripples outward and returns when it meets a similar vibration. A moment of compassion plants seeds that blossom in lifetimes you can't yet see. Every choice you make becomes part of a sacred echo. And these echoes are what shape your future incarnations, not as fate, but as frequency. Karma does not forget, but it also does not hold grudges. It is impersonal, but profoundly intimate. It meets you exactly where you are and gives you the perfect mirror to evolve. That mirror may be a difficult parent, a painful illness, a chance encounter, a sudden loss. But in every karmic reflection, there is a hidden gift, the chance to choose differently, to respond with awareness instead of reaction, to create new energy that sets a different course. And so the timing of reincarnation becomes a dance between karma and readiness. When the soul is burdened by unresolved patterns, it may be called back more quickly, sometimes before it's fully rested, because the energy it carries must be played out. These lives are often intense, full of emotional weight and recurring themes. The soul is not being punished, it is being offered another chance to break the cycle. But if the soul has done its work, if it has seen its own shadows and moved through them with courage, it may find itself in a place of waiting, a sacred pause, not as delay, but as grace. This is why some souls come back immediately after death. Their karmic threads are still tightly woven into the lives of others. And others wait centuries. Their debts have been paid, their lessons integrated, and they choose to return only when their presence serves something larger than themselves. Every return is governed not by rules, but by resonance. The universe orchestrates lifetimes with a brilliance that the human mind cannot fathom. Imagine a grand symphony, where each soul's vibration must fit into the unfolding harmony of a specific moment in history. That is the level of precision at work. Sometimes you may meet someone and feel an instant, inexplicable connection, a recognition that defies logic. That is karma, surfacing as memory. Not all karma is heavy. Not all karma is pain. There are beautiful karmic reunions, souls who return together to support, uplift, and heal one another. These relationships may feel effortless or deeply healing, and they too are part of the soul's journey toward wholeness. The same law that brings difficulty also brings love. The energy you've offered others, whether joy or sorrow, will find its way back to you, not as punishment, but as echo. And karma doesn't just shape relationships. It influences circumstances, health, wealth, talents, and even the timing of your birth. Some souls are born into wealth to learn detachment. Others are born into poverty to develop resilience. Some are born with chronic illness to awaken compassion in themselves and others. These are not rewards or punishments. They are conditions chosen, or magnetized, to create the exact environment needed for evolution. When you realize this, your entire perspective shifts. Life is no longer happening to you. It is responding to you. And your next life is being shaped, moment by moment, by the energy you carry now. Every time you forgive, you dissolve a karmic knot. Every time you choose love over fear, you lighten your future path. The soul is not trapped in an endless loop. It is ascending a spiral, and each turn of that spiral is influenced by karma, not as a prison, but as a compass. So when you ask, why hasn't this soul returned yet? Or, why did this soul come back so quickly? You are really asking about the nature of their karma. What still needed to be healed? What still called to be completed? What energies were still waiting to be transformed? Because every return is sacredly timed, not just by external forces, but by the soul's own vibrational imprint. You don't carry karma like a weight, you carry it like a map. And that map is always guiding you, not to repeat, but to remember. To remember who you truly are beyond the roles you've played. To remember that you are not the pain you caused or received. You are the consciousness choosing what comes next. And when your soul is ready, when the patterns have revealed their wisdom, and the energy has found its balance, you will return, not as a victim of karma, but as a co-creator of destiny. What if I told you that some souls remember, that, without prompting, without being taught, they carry vivid memories of lives they've never lived in this lifetime? They speak names they were never told, describe places they've never visited, recount deaths they never experienced, at least, not in the body they now inhabit. These stories are not myths. They come from children, often before the age of 6, whose words shake the boundaries of logic and time. And more often than not, they are the echoes of fast reincarnations, clues that the soul has returned swiftly, barely pausing between one lifetime and the next. Across cultures and continents, there are documented cases of children who begin speaking of past lives with stunning detail. A boy in one country describes the house he lived in before, naming relatives from another land. A girl recalls a violent death that matches the details of a news story from years before she was born. These are not vague impressions. They are precise, filled with names, locations, occupations, even accents foreign to the family they were born into. And in many cases, researchers have verified their claims, visiting the places these children spoke of, and confirming the existence of the people they once claimed to be. What these stories reveal isn't just the persistence of memory across lifetimes, they hint at something even deeper. The timing of reincarnation is not fixed. For some souls, the return is fast, so fast that the memories haven't yet dissolved into the collective unconscious. They remain vivid, close to the surface, like dreams that never had time to fade. In fact, it's believed that children are more likely to recall past lives because they are still close to the veil. Their minds have not yet been clouded by social conditioning, and their connection to the soul's deeper memory remains intact. In many of these cases, the previous life ended in trauma, sudden death, unfinished business, unresolved emotion. These intense energetic imprints can carry over, creating a kind of karmic inertia that pulls the soul back into the earthly realm quickly. The soul returns with a need to understand, to heal, to close a loop that was left open, and the memories, vivid and urgent, serve as both a bridge and a clue. But not all memories are so direct. Not all lives are remembered in sharp detail. Some return as dreams, strange landscapes you feel familiar walking through. Others arrive as irrational fears, a terror of water when you've never been near the ocean, a panic in crowds when nothing has ever happened to cause it. These aren't just psychological patterns. They may be echoes from before. Your soul is always remembering, you just might not recognize it. And then there are affinities, a child who plays the piano with no lessons, as if their fingers already know. A teenager drawn to a language they've never studied, speaking fragments of it in their sleep. An adult who visits a foreign country for the first time and feels an overwhelming wave of grief or joy. These are more than coincidences, they are energetic signatures. The soul doesn't forget, it remembers, through feeling, through instinct, through resonance. Even birthmarks, some believe, can hold clues. In certain traditions, it's said that birthmarks may be tied to the way a person died in a previous life, especially in cases of violent or sudden death. A child who remembers being shot in the chest might carry a mark over the heart in their new body. While science may dismiss this, the correlation is too consistent in certain studies to be ignored entirely. What makes these rapid rebirths different is not just the speed, but the clarity. When a soul has little time between lives, the energetic residue is strong. And if the new environment is similar, or contains the same people, the recognition is amplified. You might find yourself drawn to someone and not know why. It could be a past life connection reigniting in this one. The soul sees what the eyes cannot, and yet, these memories often begin to fade around the age of 6 or 7. As the child integrates more fully into the body and the brain develops, the veil thickens. The soul becomes more rooted in the present identity, and the past life memories slip into the subconscious. But they are not gone. They shape the person's fears, talents, desires, even their life path. You may be following a map laid out by a version of you that lived 100 years ago, and not even know it. It's not just children who carry these memories, though they often express them more freely. Adults can experience sudden flashes, a smell, a face, a dream so real it feels like a memory. These moments are glimpses through the cracks in the veil. They're reminders that your life didn't begin with this birth, and it won't end with this death. Sometimes, a trauma in this life can trigger a memory from another, a breakup, an accident, a betrayal. These can awaken echoes of past pain, showing you patterns that stretch across lifetimes. If you feel like you're repeating the same story over and over, you probably are, but not because you're cursed, because your soul is still trying to understand the lesson. So how do you know if you're carrying a rapid reincarnation? Pay attention to the moments that don't make sense, the relationships that move too fast, too deep, the phobias you can't explain. The talents you never learned but somehow have, the places that feel like home, even though you've never been. These are your breadcrumbs. Follow them, and they may lead you back to a version of yourself that still holds wisdom you need now. And if you're a parent or guardian, listen closely to the stories your child tells. If they begin to speak of other lives, don't rush to silence them. Let them speak. Ask questions. Not every tale is imaginary. Some are soul memories, waiting to be honored before they fade. Ultimately, the presence of spontaneous memories and rapid rebirths reminds us of something powerful. The soul is not limited by time. It carries continuity. It carries story. And sometimes, that story spills into this life before we have a chance to forget. When that happens, it's not an accident. It's an invitation to remember that you are more than this moment. That your soul is ancient, that what you're drawn to, what you fear, what you love, it all carries a thread. And if you follow it, you just might remember who you've been before and who you're still becoming. It's your soul reminding you that there is something more, that beyond the surface of this life, beyond the routines and roles, lies a deeper mission, something only you can bring. And maybe the reason you feel out of place is because you came here to create a new place, a new way of being, a new way of remembering. So if you often feel like a stranger in your own life, know that you're not lost. You're simply ancient in a world still waking up. The pain of that mismatch is real, but so is the gift. Because when your soul finally aligns with the rhythm of your current incarnation, when your body, mind, and energy start to flow together, something extraordinary happens. You become a bridge, a living link between worlds, a carrier of memory, wisdom, and truth. You may never fully fit in, and maybe you're not meant to. You didn't come here to conform. You came to remember. You came to activate. You came to awaken something inside yourself and inside this world. And sometimes, that starts by simply honoring the feeling that you don't belong, as proof that your soul remembers exactly where it came from. What if I told you that every twist in your journey, every delay, every sudden beginning or long pause, is part of something much more intelligent than it seems? That even when your life feels out of sync, your soul is moving in perfect rhythm with a timeline too vast, too intricate, and too loving to be fully seen from here. You are not late, you are not early, you are right on time. Because your soul's path is never random, it is written in the language of the divine, encoded with purpose, aligned with a sacred unfolding that stretches far beyond this one lifetime. The question of how long it takes a soul to reincarnate often comes from a very human place, the need to understand, to predict, to find meaning in absence or in pain. You wonder why someone left and hasn't returned. You wonder why you feel new to this world or, conversely, why you feel older than your years. You wonder if something has gone wrong, if you've missed your mark, if a soul you love is lost somewhere in the invisible spaces between lives. But nothing is ever truly lost, and no one is ever truly behind. The soul does not measure time as we do. It listens to alignment, to readiness, to the unique vibration that signals. Now, there are souls who return within months, pulled by urgent contracts, deep love, or karmic threads that refuse to be severed. There are others who wait centuries, preparing, healing, watching, until the next incarnation can serve their evolution. Neither path is more enlightened than the other. One is not a reward, the other is not a punishment. The timing of your return is part of your lesson, and every soul's rhythm is different because every soul is here to experience life in its own sacred frequency. Some lifetimes are like sparks, brief, bright, catalytic. Others are long fires, slowly burning through layers of karma, identity, and illusion. Sometimes, your soul chooses to return into chaos, into challenge, into deep collective pain, not because it has to, but because it wants to help transmute that pain from the inside out. Other times, your soul chooses peace, quiet lives with simple joys, because healing doesn't always come through struggle. Sometimes, it comes through remembering how to rest in love. The hidden purpose of every soul's timeline is integration. No experience is wasted. No delay is meaningless. When your soul waits, it's gathering strength. When it returns quickly, it's completing threads. When it chooses a family, a body, a moment in history, it does so with full awareness of what that incarnation will offer. Even the lifetimes that feel like detours are actually sacred recalibrations. Even the ones that end early carry ripples of transformation for everyone they touch. And yet, from the human perspective, this can feel elusive. You may look at your life and ask, why this body? Why this time? Why this pain? But what if your very presence here is an answer? What if you've already returned at the exact moment you were meant to, and now, the deeper invitation is not to question the timing, but to live fully within it? To trust that your soul came equipped with everything it needs to remember, to rise, to fulfill what it agreed to, long before you were born. Sometimes, we crave certainty. We want dates, maps, lifetimes labeled in neat categories, but the soul speaks through mystery, through symbols, through feelings that tug at the edges of memory. You may never know exactly when your last life ended or how many lifetimes you've lived, and that's okay, because the purpose of remembering isn't to accumulate facts, it's to activate awareness. To awaken the part of you that knows, instinctively, that your journey is much bigger than this single chapter. And yet, even without remembering, your soul leaves clues. The people you're drawn to, the places that feel familiar, the wounds that seem inherited from nowhere, all of it is part of a soul timeline that stretches behind and before you. And if you listen, Not with your ears, but with your intuition. You'll begin to feel the pulse of that timeline in the choices you're making now. The decisions that come from your deepest truth. The pull towards something greater than logic. That's your soul speaking. And when you follow it, you sync with your unique rhythm. This is not just a poetic idea, it has real impact. Because when you stop fighting the pace of your life, you begin to harmonize with it. You stop comparing your journey to others. You stop wondering if you're behind. You stop questioning why some people awaken at 20, while others awaken at 70. You begin to see that timing itself is a teacher, that your delays taught you patience, that your longing taught you presence, that your mistakes taught you depth, and suddenly, you no longer need to rush, because your soul has always been right where it needs to be. Even in your pain, there is divine choreography. Even in your confusion, there is wisdom unfolding. Some lifetimes are about building, others are about burning it all down, some are about remembering, others are about forgetting so deeply that the act of remembering becomes sacred. If you're in a season of silence, trust that something is being woven. If you're in a season of intensity, know that something is being revealed. Your timeline is not a straight line, it is a spiral, a wave, a living rhythm that breathes through every incarnation. And if you've lost someone and wondered why they haven't returned, trust that their soul is still on its path, perhaps waiting for the right alignment, perhaps guiding you from the space in between. Their absence is not abandonment, it is timing, and timing, on the soul level, is always meaningful. Likewise, if you feel like you've just arrived, like you're here for something big but you don't yet know what it is, don't worry. Your soul didn't come here to rush, it came to experience, to remember, to touch the divine through the density of form, and every breath you take is part of that remembering. So the invitation is simple. Stop trying to force clarity. Stop chasing answers from the mind. Instead, drop into your body, into your breath, into the present moment, which is the only place your soul has ever truly existed. Let your life reveal itself, not as a checklist to be completed, but as a symphony that unfolds note by note, season by season. And when it gets hard, because it will, come back to this truth. Your soul has not made a single mistake. Every turn, every pause, every choice is part of a sacred timeline you helped design. And even when you forget, even when you feel lost, something within you always remembers. That's the thread. Follow it, trust it, live from it. Because whether you return after weeks or centuries, whether you carry vivid memories or none at all, your path is holy. Your presence here is proof that your soul is still becoming, still expanding, still loving through lifetimes. So trust the rhythm of your eternal becoming. Trust the pauses. Trust the surges. Trust the unseen forces arranging your next steps. You are not behind. You are not late. You are infinite. And your soul always knows the way.